Hello and welcome to the Legends and Lads Cricket Podcast. I am Chirunandan Srinath, your host for this week. I will have my co-host Krishna Maitreya joining me in a short while. We couldn't have Vijay Lokapalli sir and Rakesh Rao sir for this week, but on today's show we have some very special guest, Prashant Patel, the first flow state cricket coach in the world. I would say. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Uh, and he's already an ECB level 4 coach. He does the coach education at ECB, and also he does biomechanics remedial work for fast bowlers. And he's worked with a lot of England fast bowlers and England cricketers. And when I had that informal talk with you, sir, I think I was really blown away by the analysis, or this was something that I was hearing for the first time. And I really made notes, and I was like, I want to have you very frequently on this show and get out so much knowledge from you, because that's the amount of knowledge your brain is storing, I would say, in that way. Thank you for coming in today's episode. And this episode is brought to you in collaboration with the Byline, an independent online news platform delivering credible and in-depth coverage across business, finance, and sports. You can check them out at www.thebyline.in for insightful news and stories that keep you informed. Thank you, Prashant sir, first of all, for joining. How are you, and how does it feel to be here?
Thank you ever so much for having me. First of all, it was a pleasure to meet you the other day. I'm really sort of excited about all of this. I realise a lot of people will be thinking, flow state coach, what on earth is he talking about? It's quite an interesting one, because a lot of the things that we do with players, with coaches, a lot of the things that I put out on LinkedIn, Instagram and stuff, people think that sounds a bit strange, but we're able to physically show people how their brain works, how their body works differently, and more specifically, teach them how to calm themselves down and get ready to perform.
I think when the first time I heard flow state was in my ninth standard, and I was really intrigued by the I wanted to be productive in my academics, but I had known this flow state. I had a very basic knowledge, and but flow state in cricket, as you said, it sounds strange to many people. But also today, I was going through a reel in Instagram, social media, and I saw that Virat Kohli's MCG knock, 82 versus Pakistan, and it's coincidental because just yesterday as we record this, we had an India-Pakistan game yesterday. So going back to 2021, if I'm not wrong, India-Pakistan game where Virat Kohli hit that 82 in Melbourne. Uh, like basically, Ashwin talks in an interview that when he comes out to bat and he has to hit those 2 runs, he's first of all scared because of the pressure and the crowd noise, everything going on. And then Virat Kohli comes and has a chat with him, and he could see Virat Kohli is like is a very different beast altogether, because I think he's gone into the flow state, and he says that Virat Kohli looked like is another planet. I think that is flow state, if I'm not wrong. Correct me, sir. And Ravichandran Ashwin wanted to stay calm and think that I'm from Earth, he's from some other planet. So talk about flow state generally. What is flow state in cricket? And maybe you can relate it with Virat Kohli's knock in MCG, because I brought up that example.
But that's a really good example, because whenever you speak to any sort of international, professional players or anyone that plays a good grade of cricket, whenever you ask them, how did you feel when you had your best innings? A lot of them, it was a bit of a blur, so they can't remember it at that particular point. So if they try and repeat it, they can never remember the steps that they actually use to get into it. Now, flow state, and this is where it gets interesting. In cricket, if you think of techniques, I don't know how you were taught when you were younger, but we were very much taught one technique and everyone had to kind of do it. But the idea of flow state and how we teach it, it's a thing called motor signatures. Now, each individual has their own signature of how they move, think, learn. But then within that, things change. So imagine you're really relaxed, and you've turned up for an event, you're relaxed. You'll present yourself in a certain way. Your personality will be in a certain way. Your posture will be in a certain way. And if all of a sudden they put you on stage and there's 2,000 people for you to talk in front of, and you don't even know the topic, you feel quite nervous. And all of a sudden things change and it becomes a little bit more tricky to talk. in the sort of way that you want to go. So I guess flow state isn't necessarily about doing everything in one way. It's learning how to adapt. And that's what we do with the players, is teach them, actually, when you're relaxed, a different part of your brain is active. So for me, I'd start on the right-hand side of the upper hemisphere of my brain. So for me, there's a lot of speedy thinking and things going on in my head, but it's not always accurate. So sometimes there's lots of thoughts floating in my head, and my wife's the opposite. She's a left brain person, and she doesn't like to multitask too many things at the same time. When she does, she generally burns herself and stuff or gets injured. So she's very detailed. So if you ever look at our house, and you're welcome to come over at some point, I'm the messy one, scattered brain, and she tidies everything up meticulously, and I can't find it. But going back to actual players like Virat and stuff, they've all got different things that actually motivate them. So if you listen to people talk, did you ever see that series? It was with Michael Jordan. It was The Last Dance. It was about his final series season with the NBA team, the Chicago Bulls. Did you see that one?
I do not follow any other sport other than cricket. So.
Oh, no, you're missing out. Okay. So in that, it was really interesting because Michael, to get into his flow state, what he does, he creates a battle between himself and the opponent. And you'll see examples of this. So if you think of people like Kohli, for instance, people know that Kohli, Brian Lara, these kind of characters, you don't go up to them and start an argument. You do that and suddenly you'll be hit for like 200-300 runs before you even know it. So certain people really spark and come to life when there's a battle between you and me. But if it's very easy, they sort of get a little bit more demotivated and things like that. So flow state also depends on what motivates you as well. And then it's the conditions and how your mind considers the things. So if you imagine, I'm going to throw a question to you. Imagine you've come in and it's a World Cup final. And final wicket, you're batting with Kohli, but you're on strike. Okay, you need 15 runs in 6 balls. How do you feel about that? If you had to face the first ball and you had to get 15 off 6 balls, how would you be feeling?
Because I'm not a batter, I think I'll be nervous first of all, and looking at the crowd, I would have. I think I would have had the same feeling that Ashwin had when he walked out to bat in that Melbourne game.
Exactly, and it's
Not quite.
perfectly normal. Now, if you imagine you were Virat Kohli and you're already on 70, you're creaming everyone all over the place, you had to get 15 off 6 balls. How would you feel now?
Maybe I'm more confident.
Yeah. So it's a very similar scenario, but we'll have different perspectives on whether we would just come in, and how we perceive the information as well. So flow state's also around how we take a scenario and how we actually look at that particular scenario as well. So lots of people can get stressed out by something very, very simple, like being scared of a spider or something. And other people just pick it up and move it. So our perspective on whatever happens is very, very important as well.
You advocate a lot for players having their own techniques according to their how their brain works and how their muscle movements, because they are all unique to different individuals, and you feel that coaches shouldn't enforce or force their techniques what they believe in on players. I mean that at least that is the essence from the last call that we had, the informal call. So uh, I'm sure it is very unconventional, and a lot of people, especially coming from the elite or the traditional form of traditional form of coaching, they would say no, this is not working. There are certain things that have to be done, and this has to be done in this way. So how are you going to tell them?
I think that's a really tricky one, because if you think about everyone's personal experience, the only thing you can fall back on is your own personal experience. So if you've experienced something and it worked for you, the assumption is it will work for everyone else. But if you look at everyone, if you compare Shiv Narayan Chanderpaul to Sachin Tendulkar, very, very different styles, how they trigger, move, get set to play their shots. You think of Brian Lara, absolutely amazing player. Technically, he doesn't look anywhere near what Tendulkar would look, but you can't argue with the runs. He's broken multiple world records. I think what I'd say to coaches is, instead of being very particular about what you want to see technically. So I met a girl yesterday. She came for our trial, And she said she's just come over from India, and she was telling me how the batter that she's bowling to has a bad technique. And I asked her, what do you mean by that? And she said the feet aren't parallel. And even that alone is quite an interesting one, because it's taught very commonly that your feet must be parallel. Okay. The problem with it, we have a lot of different parameters. Okay. And one of them is what we call the motor eye. Okay. So the motor eye is slightly different to what we call the dominant eye. So a dominant eye, if any of your listeners have ever heard of it, if you make a little circle with your arms, so at the minute I'm sort of making a circle to look through. Now I'm trying to look at the image of you. Now, if I close my left eye, I can't see you. If I close my right eye, I can see you. Now, the dominant eye is commonly really misunderstood. The dominant eye is used to aim at static objects. So imagine we're shooting a gun. Fingers crossed no one's doing that. But we're shooting a gun at a target. Let's say it's like a dartboard kind of target. We'd use our dominant eye. Now, a motor eye tracks moving objects at very, very high speeds. Now, when they looked at the England squad, when they did an analysis of them, 60% of the batters, they matched. But that meant 40% of the batters, it didn't match. So all of a sudden, they were lining up the wrong eye with what's going on. So now people are probably thinking, hang on a minute, that's a bit weird, talking about eyes. But if you look really carefully, the next time you watch, say, Virat Kohli bat, if you watch, his nose will point to the umpire. And if it's a right-arm over bowler, the bowler will now be on his right-hand side whenever he bowls. The interesting bit is when he gets coached technically to face left arm over, which is a different angle, they'll move the feet, hips, shoulders, everything else, but the nose still went to the umpire. So all of a sudden now he's looking at a left arm over with the left eye, which is non-motorized side. So what happens is you take in information slower, and when you looked at the stats at that particular point, his stats were worse against left arm bowlers. Now, you could say some of them were more skilled or whatever. You can argue different things. But if you watch Virat when he catches, for instance, and this is a good way for coaches to actually see it, if you boom bat a ball nice and flat at someone to catch, what you'll notice is, say for Virat, whenever he caught on the left-hand side, whenever he catches, the nose will point exactly to the ball and track it all the way into the hands on the left. But when he catches at high speed to the right-hand side, he'll catch it. The hands will be behind him, but it almost looks lazy. He doesn't track it all the way into the hands. And I've got examples that I've put on YouTube around this. So the motorized side, you spot information a lot quicker. You don't necessarily have to have it in the center of your vision. And vision works in lots of different ways that people don't understand as well. So on the ECB coach education, about 12 years ago, they started looking into all of these preferences that humans have. And the first experience I had of it, we turned up and they do physical tests on you. So imagine you're standing there, they'll push through the side of you and tell you different things like think of blue, red, breathe in, breathe out. And all of us walked away at the end of the session thinking, what on earth has just happened to us? We don't understand any of this. I like red, I like breathing out. I don't know. We couldn't figure it out. And when I went on the course to better understand it, it really sort of connected the dots. So now what we do with the coaches on the module is get them to do practicals. So, for instance, if you look at any one catch, and Virat's a very good example of this, when he catches a flat ball that's below him, you'll see I'm wearing a cap. And with someone like me, if I catch, my vision works eye level and up for peripheral vision that's moving at high speed. So when it goes below my eye line, I'll dip my head. So if you see my dipping of the head there, you won't see my eyes for a split second as I dip my head. And if you watch other batters like Owen Morgan, Kevin Peterson, even Brendan McCullum, what you'll see is even when Owen Morgan was sweeping a ball that might be 2 inches off the floor, you'll see the whole of his face and he'll just tilt the eyes down to see the ball. So his vision is actually eye level and below. So what we advise for people that have that kind of vision is say, when you're in your stance, slightly tilt your chin up so your horizon of your eyes now goes up towards the release point because it's always a little bit higher. So what you'll see is some of the elements of flow state link into different preferences, how we move, and then our visual system and things. So we make subtle little alignments. So going back to that girl's example where she said, Coach, you've got to be very, very side on. For me, that would work because my motor eye is the left-hand side. So as I look, I can kind of get into a position where I can see with my left. But if I was Kohli and I was trying to get my nose to go to the umpire from very side on, it really strains your neck to be able to get into that position. So what we see with people is we've got to tweak different parts of the body to make sure that they can see well. And if things are done in your preference, everything feels comfortable. That's the most important thing. So if you take, for instance, when you see like batting stances, have you ever seen Steve Smith hold a bat?
Yes, sir. Very weird.
So Steve is really interesting. If you watch his bottom hand, okay, traditionally, I realize this is a pen, but anyway, you've got a V between your thumb and your index finger, the webbing in between. Okay. Traditionally, coaches will tell you get both of your V's in a line and put it down the back of the spine of the bat. Okay. Some will say move it a little bit this way or that way, whatever. Now, if you watch Steve Smith, what he'll do for a split second, the right hand will almost turn 90 degrees at one point in his swing. Now, for me, if I swing like that, it feels like the most awkward thing ever. But he can still bring a bat face completely flat towards where he wants to hit. So what happens is for certain people, they'll have strange grips, but that allows them to deliver the bat nice and straight so that they can hit the ball straight. So when we talk to batting coaches in particular, they'll say, look, we've got to fix the grip, we've got to do this. You really look at the outcome. Are we able to transfer our weight? Are we able to rotate in positions, produce power, get from one balanced position to another balanced position? And can we make sure that the bat face is nice and clean through the ball, where you can open and close your hands to place the ball as well? And if you're checking a lot of that, you're probably in a really good place. But if you keep doing, everyone's grip has to be exactly the same. You all have to line up exactly the same distance, for feet and limbs and things like that. It's very, very tricky for people.
Yes, sir. It is important to make these minor tweaks in a player's technique. But before we go into that, I think we missed a point. So we did talk about flow state, and I just now got an example of Maxwell's knock in Mumbai. So that is another example, I think. So first of all, how how do people get into this flow state? Like now, if I'm going and playing a cricket match, uh, I'm a fast bowler. So how do I focus at that intensity or that level, and how do I make myself get into that flow state so that I get out my best performance? So how do I train my brain to get into that intensity?
Okay, so everyone's flow state is very, very different. So, for instance, I don't know if you've ever done breathing exercises. Have you ever looked into breathing before?
Yes, sir. I do daily.
Okay, for instance, me, there's four major motor profile families. Okay, so I'm rhythmical, and for me, I need to exhale to produce more force. Okay, and then we've got one example who's in the England team at the minute. So he's one of the quicker bowlers in the country, Sonny Baker. He needs to inhale to produce more force. So what happens is the way for us to access our flow state is very, very unique to each person. So a lot of the coaches that will say, you've just got to do this and everyone will suddenly succeed, it doesn't actually work that way. So what happens, the most important thing is when you're happy, relax your brain doesn't like negative thoughts. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is start programming in positive thoughts. Okay, so even the language that we use is very, very important. Whenever you talk to someone, friends, family, whoever it wants to be, what you want them to do is talk about what they want to do. So whenever we ask a bowler to do something, we'll say, I want to bowl in this area. And they target in different ways as well. But they always say, I want, because it's their own personal decision. The second you say, I have to, I must, or anything like that, the brain hates it. You're straight out of flow. So it's really important what you program in. So when we do the physical tests with people, and it's a shame, I'll probably get to meet you sometime soon and I'll show you, we can show how this subtle change in language impacts you directly. Okay. And then other things to do with flow state is how you move. So for instance, when you bowl quick, which foot do you start your run up off?
I start with the right foot.
With the right foot. Okay, that's interesting. So does Sonny as well. And if you were someone that was more a right side initiator, okay, so out of those four motor families, One is rhythmical, that's mine. One is conceptual, which could be yours, it's Sunny's, okay? We specifically start on one side or the
I
other.
think I start with left. I think I start with left.
Sorry?
I
Oh, you
think
start
I'll
with the left.
start with left.
Okay, awesome. All right, you might be more like me then. So what happens here is even if you initiate off the wrong foot, you can start getting into a bad situation with the brain. And I know that sounds really weird, but for instance, when we meet batters, do you believe in a trigger move when you bat?
I do not bat a lot, but our captain says that while fielding, you need to make that movement. I mean, when the bowler is taking the run up, to stay in certain position and have the trigger so that you're if the ball comes to you, you can react to it quickly. So I think I do believe in trigger, but as a fielder.
Yeah. So the interesting thing here is lots of batting coaches will say you do need a trigger. Some will say you don't need to, stay still. 50% of the population need to stay still. Okay. They can trigger, but they'll go from a wide base into a narrow one. And we'd have to teach them how. Okay. And the other 50% split into two sections. So some must start on the left. Okay. Some must start on the right. So really famous examples of people that start on the right, if you think of Virat Kohli, Steve Smith, those people always trigger off the right. If they do try and trigger off the left, they'll react slower to the ball. And if you think of famous people that trigger up more off the left, you've got people like Ricky Ponting. So Ricky's a really interesting one because if you watch him, batting coaches will say at point of release, when the ball is let go, you should already be in another sort of balanced position, almost flat on the floor. But if you look at Ricky Ponting, his front foot's hovering in the air. Now, people that are left side initiators like myself that are rhythmical motor profiles, they like to be in movement. So if you think of him, I'm not saying John T. Rhodes was a gun batter, but he was an amazing fielder. John T. again, his left foot will be in the air. He'll almost press just after release and then move again. Now, if you watch him field, for instance, and I don't know if you've ever seen him field, he'll walk in, and as the ball's being hit, he's in midair. He actually jumps, and as he sees the ball being hit, he turns in midair and starts moving straight away. Whereas most of us get coached, walk in, split step and stand there and wait for this ball to be hit. And for a lot of us, that actually stops us from moving very quickly. I hope that kind of makes sense so far.
Yes, sir. So my next question to you, uh, it is about fast bowlers, and I'm sure you do work with biomechanics as well. So I'm sure in fast bowling I think it is the maximum amount of biomechanics involved compared to batting, fielding, and everything else. Because a small change in the action, just say the wrist position, I mean, how you flick the ball or anything, I think it can increase almost 5 kilometers per hour pace. So I think every muscle movement in fast bowling has that potential of producing more pace. It's also important to do it in a way that you don't get stress factors. So how do you analyze fast bowlers? I mean, yeah, it is personalized for everyone, but generally uh, helping them to generate that pace as well as same time protecting themselves from all this fractures and other injuries. So how do you do it, sir?
So I think we're really lucky in that I don't know if you've heard of Stephen Jones, but Stephen Jones is one of the elite fast bowling coaches globally. And we co-run a Pace Lab London, basically. So we work together on this project. So he's partnered with us. So he provides a lot of the S&C tools, which were the missing pieces for us. But I think fast bowling is really interesting because if you go to the ECB now, like level 4 modules and things, very rarely does anyone actually talk about the detail of the technique anymore. Now they just talk about KPIs. We want the hips to rise and stuff like that. Okay, and a brace front leg and certain things. They don't tell you the how. So what you'll see with fast bowlers is they all generate pace in a different way. But if you think of, in the old days, they used to say, release the ball and brush your ear. So get your arm as high as possible, thinking a bit more Glenn McGrary, right? And if you think at the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got Lasith Malinga, where the arm was almost perpendicular to the spine, so 90 degrees off the spine. The interesting bit is how many people do you think bowl like Lasith Malinga in the world? How many people do you think in professional cricket that you've seen?
Just I think two or three from Sri Lanka youngsters who have seen Maling. I think there is I'm not getting the player's name in my mind, but he did play for CSK. I mean, my memory is bad, sir. But yeah, there are two. Patirana, sorry, yeah.
That's the guy. Yeah, yeah. So the interesting bit, right? We reference and think everyone bowls like Malinga if they're upright and the arm is at 3 or 9 o'clock, however you're looking at it, okay? But if you watch Trent bowl, right, he actually, if you take his upper body, tilt it over to about 10:30, his arm in relation to the upper spine is almost 90 degrees, just like Malinga. So what happens is we've actually got a natural arm slot in relation to our upper spine. If a coach comes in and tells someone that does need to, we call that slinging if you're 3 or 2 o'clock. If they tell them bowl over the top very high, either they chuck the ball. So I'm getting a lot of these with children that come in and start chucking it. Actually, when we lower the arm slot, it cleans it out and they bowl quicker. Or what happens, so when they try and get to 12, they'll lean over quite a long way, which leads into your spinal issue you were talking about earlier. So what happens with like stress fractures and things like that, there's a few things. So one is, have you heard of hip-shoulder separation?
I did hear it before, and I think the second time I heard it was from you in that unofficial call that we had. So you can talk.
Okay. About it. All right. So hip-shoulder separation, okay? Probably about 10 years ago, there's a fast bowling coach called Ian Ponce who runs National Fast Bowling Academy, okay? And he wrote some books, and he was looking at, how people bowl fast. The first book was quite a bit off. The second book, he took elements from javelin, and then that's where he learned, okay, if my front leg is braced, my hips will rotate. So my hips, imagine like a belt buckle. He's trying to get the belt buckle to point down the wicket. And at the same time, he's trying to get your left shoulder as a right arm bowler to almost point down the wicket and your right shoulder to go away from your target. Okay. So what he's in effect trying to do, your hips face the target and your shoulders are almost perpendicular. There's almost like a cross in your body if you look from a bird's eye point of view. Now, what happens is if you watch some of the fastest bowlers in the world, so Sonny was actually one of these examples. He had 3 stress fractures, I think it was, in 3 years. And he met a bowling coach that through Stefan called Aaron out in Australia, who teaches what I do for fast bowling. And he's actually completely decreased the amount that he hip shoulder separates. So some people, what they do is they almost work like a hurricane. Okay, so if you imagine like a tornado, the base spins, so we're talking like the feet start spinning, then the hips spin, then the shoulders and arm begin to spin along the same plane. So it's all going like a hurricane up the body. Okay, now if you think of someone like Jofra Archer, for instance, very different guy. So he's more sort of over the top when he releases. And if you watch his follow through, lots of bowling coaches will say finish with your bowling arm below and on the outside of your front leg. Barely does that. See, it almost looks like when he lets go of the ball, it almost looks like he stops, his shoulders go slightly forward, but it's absolutely amazing seeing how he can get 92, 93 miles an hour, and he never looks like he's even trying. And here we are bowling 70 miles an hour, huffing, puffing and screaming to try and get it down the other end. He just walks in and goes, there you go, some 92 miles an hour at you. So the interesting thing about the body is the people that have a higher arm slot of 12 and 1, that's more of a biomechanical action. So it's a little bit more like Ian's work. Okay, so those kind of people, when the front foot lands, you're trying to brace your front leg. So that means you're trying through the knee joint to keep it straight. Okay, and there's ways that you've got to get that done. With your front arm, you reach out towards the batter and pull back. And when you pull back very hard, it fires the right hip, bowling shoulder, and chest all to rotate and go forward. So that's where they get lots of speed. Now, if you watch someone like Trent bowl, things like that, and Sean Tate, the sling bowlers, now they bowl blooming quick when they really bowl. What they do, and if you watch baseballers as well, the front arm, instead of pulling on the outside of the body, it will turn and lock in front of the left hip. So if you watch them, it's almost like they blocked with their forearm in front of their left hip, and then they bowl. And that's very important to them because what they're trying to do is keep tension in the body. So it's a weird one to explain, but the next time you suddenly start watching people with a lower arm slot, you'll see that that front arm actually locks in there. And if they pull back on the outside, they'll probably lose 6-7 miles an hour of pace whenever we've done them on speed guns. So it's really important for bowling coaches to understand, like, what does the front arm actually do? You don't want to pull too hard down because that takes the body over to the side. We call that lateral flexion, and you might get spinal issues in there as well. Really what happens is, when you get mainly lumbar issues. So lumbar is the lower part of the spine. That's where lots of fast bowling injuries actually happen. That comes because not only, if this was the upper body, my palm, imagine my palm is on my forearm facing towards the camera, let's say. If my palm goes forward, but also turns towards cover at the same time, that's when I start getting problems with the spine. You start compressing on the left-hand side. So if you ever feel pain, just as a right arm bowler, on the lower left-hand side of the spine, you probably need a bit of help at that point with your action.
I think I do have pain, sir.
We'll go through that separately then. You'll have to send me videos.
So this will bring you to the end of the part 1 of this interview. Thank you, Prashant sir, for joining us. Thank you, Maitre, for joining.
Brilliant. Thank you.